Welcome everyone to tonight's Federation Conversation Live. My name is Tandalyn Daniel. I serve as the Director of Communications and Member Relations at the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund. We want to welcome you to tonight's Federation Conversation Live, which is our knowledge sharing platform where we bring in different guests and speakers, staff, non-staff, and we bring them in to discuss cooperative development, land retention, and advocacy. I'd like to start off by introducing, and Naomi, if you could give a wave of your hand, Naomi Tompkins. She is our Senior Cooperative Development Fellow. And Naomi joined the Federation in 2024 as our very first Cooperative Development Fellow after graduating from New York University in 2023 with a degree in Black Political Science. She's based out of our Atlanta, Georgia administrative offices, and she works regionally to support our cooperative development staff and membership. She recently visited Costa Rica with 20 other cooperatives, and that is what sparked this series where we are going to be, for the rest of the year, we're going to be discussing once a month a topic for people who are just getting into cooperative development. My very, very special guest, John Zippert, is one of the Federation's founding members. He has worked in cooperative development for over 50 years. He is based out of Utah, Alabama. He has run our Rural Training and Research Center, and we welcome him. Naomi will be our presenter, and John will chime in with cooperative knowledge to help support the conversation and questions as we get started. Naomi, are you ready to share your screen?
Yes, I am. Give me 1 second.
And I want everyone who's on the call to know that this is going to be like in a few different parts. If you have a question, please put that question in the Q&A section. In addition to that, we will just take questions throughout. Anything that we don't get answered, we will try to answer in a either follow-up session or via email.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, thank you for the introduction, Tandalyn. So like Tandalyn said, this course is called, or this presentation is about understanding the cooperative business model. It is one of hopefully many that we're going to have for the rest of the year, one a month, for 2 different times, one in the first week of the month and one in the second week of the month, usually on Thursday. So yes, this presentation is mainly about theoretical concepts about the cooperative business model. So there isn't a lot of practical applications. We will definitely get to that in later sessions. So if you have any questions, please ask them. It's going to be, or let me just start, sorry. So yes, it's going to be in 3 parts. The first part is going to be about the cooperative business model in general. And after that section, it'll be about 3 or 4 slides. We're going to take questions, and then we'll go into how cooperatives compare to traditional businesses. And then kind of looking at the worker cooperative model, the agricultural cooperative model, and how that compares to a more of a private investor structure. And then we'll take questions after that. And then the third part will be about membership and governance in cooperatives and how that kind of differentiates them from traditional businesses. And then we'll take questions, and we'll take questions over the whole thing. So go ahead and get started. So what is a cooperative? A cooperative is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. So people form cooperatives for all sorts of needs. This can be from buying and selling goods to providing services, and this can range from childcare to groceries to agricultural products and also to financial services. And so what is cooperative development? So cooperative development is the process of building and strengthening cooperative businesses. And obviously these businesses, like I just said, address shared community needs. And so the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, we have a cooperative development cohort that meets frequently. And each state that has a state association should have cooperative development staff that can support those interested in cooperatives in that state and also fully formed cooperatives in that state. But we provide a range of technical assistance that can go from membership, training on governance, training on business plans, feasibility studies. And then we also support cooperatives at every stage of development. So if you are interested in a cooperative and want to find others in your community and don't know how, or trying to figure out what are the best pathways to find those are also interested in joining the same cooperative as you, the Federation can help you at that step in seeing how to do outreach. And then also, even if you're a fully formed cooperative, interested in how to redo your bylaws or to redo your business plan, the Federation can also help with that. So we help with individuals at every step. So the 7 cooperative principles, this is most likely going to be a presentation all in itself, but this is also, we just like to start out presentations with the 7 cooperative principles, so they'll be at the front of our minds throughout our thinking and the way that we're asking questions and all of that. So just to briefly go over them, and then I'll also highlight principle 3 and principle 7, which are really at the foundation of the cooperative enterprise model in its properties. So the first principle is voluntary and open membership. Principle 2 is democratic member control. Principle 3 is member economic participation. Principle 4 is training, education, and information. Principle 5 is autonomy and independence. Principle 6 is cooperation among cooperatives. And principle 7 is concern for community. So just to break down principle 3, it's also called often one member, one vote. And you'll see that throughout the presentation. That's often a saying said in cooperatives, kind of just to show the democratic member control and the democratic nature of cooperatives, how each member has a say and an opinion in the decisions that are made for the organization. So principle 3, cooperatives are founded on the ideas of democracy. Each member plays an integral role in the making of decisions that affect the organization as a whole. And then all the members have equal rights, equal voting rights, with one ballot per individual, and elected officials hear everyone's voice or every member's voice. And then principle 7, concern for community. All cooperatives focus on their internal communities, but they also are concerned with their local communities outside of the organization. Co-ops should be sourcing materials from and invest in local suppliers to contribute to the local community's sustainability. So the 3 inherent properties of cooperatives. The first one is people-centered, or the nature of being people-centered, and then member-owned and democratically controlled. So all cooperatives should have these 3 principles in their model and in the way that they practice. So just a framework for cooperatives to the right. A model that is often used is having the co-op at the middle and having people-centered at the top triangle, and then member-owned at the bottom right triangle, and then democratically controlled on the left. Just showing how these 3 properties make up and support the cooperative. And then inside of that, the cooperative is also an economic entity, but it operates within the society and the local community, and which operates within the environment. and they're just circles around the cooperative just to show that the cooperative is cognizant of and always interested in the benefits of the society and the environment. So the dual nature of cooperative membership. Sorry. So cooperatives are constantly performing a balancing act because their members are both users and owners. So this means that at every decision, they must take into account economic sustainability while also serving the social and community needs of the members. Unlike traditional businesses where profit is the sole focus, which is a generalization, but we'll use that here. Cooperatives must carefully navigate how to sustain operations while prioritizing people. Another common phrase is cooperatives are people. People are not, the people and the members are not behind the cooperative, but they are the cooperative. They make up the cooperative. There wouldn't be a cooperative without any members. And this obviously we'll see later in the last section of the presentation. This can make governance more complex, but ultimately more rewarding because you're putting systems in place to make sure that everyone is accounted for and heard. And then in the model to the right, it just shows the dual nature of cooperative membership. So the members on the left and what they put into the cooperative in a way is them being owners, and what they get out of it is how they are users. So they are both users and owners at the same time. We'll use this model to show how this plays out in different kinds of cooperatives in the next section. And then, yes, questions? We can stop for questions now.
We do have a couple of questions. The first one comes, it says, do we have staff to help with cooperative development in Georgia? Yes, we do have a Georgia field office in Albany, Lauren. You can definitely get that on our website. I'm trying to see if anybody from Georgia is on the phone. I'm sorry, on the webinar, but yes, we do. And I actually would like to ask Mr. Zippert a question at this point regarding starting a cooperative. Is there any advice that you could share based on some of the information that Naomi has said about, because we have a question about how do I start a farm cooperative? And I'm trying to see who asked that question, but John, what would you say to somebody who was interested in starting a farm cooperative?
So I think we have to go back to the very beginning, which is the definition. And basically, a cooperative is a voluntary business structure that is formed by people who have a common need. So when you say a farm cooperative, are you saying that the farmers want to buy their inputs at a better price? Are you saying they want to sell their products at a better price? Do they want to organize themselves because one person might produce 100 bushels of okra, but the market is asking for 500 or 1,000 bushels at a time? So the need, what you have to identify what it is that you need the cooperative to do for you. And then you need to find other farmers in your community and sit down with them and discuss what needs you have and what needs you feel the cooperative could serve and could help you produce a better economic result. And
And that
then
That question came from Shaniqua Bowden. And Shaniqua, I see you. I think I've allowed you to come off mute. Does that answer your question? No. Shaniqua, I see you. Asked to unmute.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, hello.
So, hi. Yeah, I didn't realize how many different ways this question could be answered. For me, I have I'm stewarding a very large piece of land. And I think the idea was that, we turn this into like a Black cooperative. But now that we have the land, it's like all different ways of thinking about whether the community is, does the community have some kind of ownership to the land in ter in terms of like what do you say? In terms of like shares, do we break it up so that the community has shares to the land and there's some ownership or we're all using it in some kind of way? Or is it that, you just have like a number of farmers come to the land and live there and all share, like, excuse me, grow, share the land as in growing food and, I don't know if they all have businesses or something like that, but yeah, maybe I didn't think this through. I thought it was a simple.
Shaniqua, how much
Yes.
land, how much land are you talking about?
Um, well, I guess the land in total sounds larger than the actual usable space. The usable space might be around 10 acres
Okay.
to actually like grow food and have a couple structures.
Okay, so my part of my answer to you would be that most of our farm producer cooperatives are composed of individual farmers that own their own land. And some, like you, have 10 acres, and some have 20 acres, and some have 50 acres, and most have less than 100 acres. But I guess maybe 5 or 10% of our membership has more than 100 acres. So what you're really talking about here is you need whatever you're going to produce on your 10 acres, you need to get with other farmers that are going to produce as well to form a cooperative that could market vegetables or market goats or market something else that you can raise on a 10-acre plot. You said it was a large plot, but in comparison, the average farm in America, and this is black, white, and whatever, it is close to 500 acres now because of the consolidation that has gone on over the
Mm,
last few years. Now, for black people, it is a lesser acreage because of the whole history and problems of black people acquiring land and keeping it. Now, we have also had, for instance, we had a cooperative in Mount Bayou, Mississippi, that had 500 acres, and they made that 500 acres available to about 25 families.
mm,
And those were landless people. In other words, they didn't have any land of their own. So the Mount Bayou Farm Co-op was a way to help people who were landless to get access to a piece of land.
mhm,
I'm also knowledgeable of a group. They're not a cooperative, but they function together of refugee farmers. These are people from Africa, Asia, and different other places who came from a farming background. They have 200 or 300 acres, and people have a 5 acre or a 10 acre plot
So,
within that acreage.
John and Shanika, what I'd like to say is I think that you've gotten some ideas or you've gotten some clarity that there's a lot of different ways that you can move, right? And it's all dependent upon the community and who you get to come along. And so, and the chat is actually popping up, and I want to give the next question to Naomi, but maybe John has kind of answered it, and then we're going to move into the second section. But the last thing I wanted to say, Shaniqua, are you currently engaged in the Federation's cooperative development process? What state are you in?
I'm in New York.
Oh, okay. And so is your farm, is it in the south or is it in the north?
In the north.
Okay, okay. Because we predominantly work across the South, but the things that John and Naomi are talking about are applicable wherever
Mhm.
you are. Okay. All right.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I really
And
like that Mount Bayou Farm Cooperative. I'm going to look that up. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
so it sounds like what you have is what I would call a community garden. And you could organize that space in the way that the people in Mount Bayou did. You could give people you could allow people access to a half acre or an acre. You can raise a lot of food for home consumption on a half acre of land if you cultivate it intensively. And so, I use the word community garden because I know that there are a lot of community garden type situations in urban areas. And generally they make a plot of land available to each of the families that's part of the community garden to raise crops, mostly for home consumption and possibly to give to neighbors. That's a little different than a production agriculture cooperative that we have in the South, where we have farmers with substantial acreage who are growing similar products to market together in a cooperative way.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, and thank you, Shaniqua. And then for you, Naomi, we've had a lot of people, 3 or 4 come in and ask about mentorship. Could you explain how the Federation could support someone, or could you give your thoughts on mentorship for someone trying to start a cooperative?
Yes, so depending on what state you're in, so if you're in a state that has Federation staff, so if you're a state that has a state association or an office, it would be contacting your state office and letting them know that you're interested in learning about cooperative development. And then in whatever industry or sector you're trying to enter in, I would also include that information and how many people you have currently with you, or just describe the group that you have that's interested in joining a cooperative or creating a cooperative. And then that state will have either a co-op specialist in that state or another state reach out to you. And the first thing we do is probably have a Zoom meeting with everyone interested. And then from the Zoom meeting, we will schedule an in-person meeting with the group. If you're interested in agriculture and an agricultural cooperative, we'll often do a farm visit. If it's going to be a different kind of cooperative, we might just meet at a local library or often a church or community space, and then just do an interesting presentation on similar to this one about what cooperatives are and it'll usually be catered to the specific kind of cooperative that you're trying to create, and not as general as this one. So that'd be the first step, is to contact your state office. And if you do not have a state office or a state staff, then I would contact the regional office, and then they will point you to, or they will definitely give your information to someone who can assist you.
And just to, before we move into the second part of this discussion, this educational session, we have boots on the ground, or offices, or staff in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, South Carolina, Mississippi, and Texas. But our charter grants us we work across the South. We're chartered out of DC. So we do try to support cooperatives all over the South. But clearly, if we've grown to the point to have staff, then there's more support that you can get there. And now let's move into the second section of the presentation.
Okay, so the cooperative difference. So cooperatives are differentiated from other business entities because of the role of the members. And as I was talking about in the previous slide, the dual nature of cooperative members, where they are owners and users and also members. So there's 3 different ways we can look at this. So member ownership, member control, and member benefits. So to start off with member ownership, in a cooperative, the people who use the business also own it, ensuring that decisions align with their needs rather than external investors. And then member control. Each member has a say in major business decisions following the principle, one member, one vote. This is unlike traditional businesses where voting power is often tied to the number of shares owned. And then member benefits. So instead of maximizing profits for external shareholders, cooperatives reinvest earnings into the business or distribute them to members based on their level of participation. And so just an overview. So traditional businesses are often structured to maximize profits for investors, while cooperatives exist to serve their members. So in traditional businesses, ownership, decision-making, and financial benefits are concentrated among investors and executives. Again, that's a generalization, but we're going to use it for the rest of the presentation. So workers and producers have a little influence over business choices, as decisions are made by those who hold financial stakes rather than those directly involved in labor or production. So cooperatives operate differently. They are owned and controlled by the people who use them. Whether workers, producers, or consumers, members collectively decide how businesses operate, ensuring that decision-making serves their needs rather than external investors. So again, this principle, which you'll hear throughout, you'll probably hear it a lot, one member, one vote. That's kind of the democratic member control principle 3 that I was talking about earlier. So every member will have an equitable voice. So this cooperative model creates a more inclusive and sustainable economic system where people directly, the people directly impacted by the business decisions actively participate in shaping them. A good example of this is another member business model would be Sam's Club or Netflix, where it's kind of a subscription base. And if they raise the price of membership or they change the price of different items, usually the members of that organization are not the ones involved in making those decisions. Member and or shoppers are really only able to voice their opinions through their patronage and their buying patterns and habits. They don't really have say in large financial decisions or business decisions of the organization that they are members of. So just to break it down for worker cooperatives, so just to compare worker cooperatives to privately owned businesses, So some example industries for this would be textile workers, which would be kind of a traditional factory that is privately owned. And this would be different from a worker-owned textile cooperative where those who work at the textile factory, the workers also own the business as opposed to it being privately owned. And then cab drivers, instead of privately owned taxi companies owning different or controlling different cabs and different cab drivers, there's a driver-owned taxi co-op where the taxi drivers also all create an organization for themselves and democratically run it themselves to make decisions for all of the cab drivers collectively. And then another example, which is really popular recently, is consulting firms. So instead of a privately owned consulting firm, it'll have the cooperatively owned consulting firm will have a structure where they'll have someone who's over, say, marketing, someone who's over media or contracts or advertisement. And instead of everyone individually working through a wage or commission for a private owner, they all individually own their own service or practice, and they all operate under a cooperative where the workers who work, each consultant owns the business collectively. So just to break it down, it's good questions to ask about a business or a cooperative that you see: who owns it, who controls it, and who benefits. So in a privately owned example for this would be the people who own it are external investors or a small group of executives, and that it is controlled by owners or upper management. And then the benefits or the profits go to the owners, and the workers receive wages but have little decision-making influence or power. And then in a worker cooperative, the alternative would be the organization is owned by the workers who operate the business daily, and it is controlled by the workers who elect a leadership and vote on major decisions. They'll often elect a board, and the board will elect or hire a manager, and that manager will manage the whole organization. And that manager is often controlled by the board, and the board is made up of the workers who are also members, and all the people on the board are also workers. So it's everyone is in different positions and often always running the business. And then for benefits, the profits are shared among the workers, and decisions prioritize worker well-being because the workers are the ones making those decisions. And then kind of going back to the model that I showed earlier, on the left, the members, and those members are workers, and kind of what they put into the cooperative as owners is their employment or their jobs. And then what they get out of it is either a above market or equal market income. And that's kind of the use that they get out of it. So if you can see, it really should be a circle, but kind of the flow of how the ownership goes through their employment, and what they get out of it is the use, which is the income and the benefits from making your own decisions for your work environment. And then to look at producer cooperatives, some examples of this would be agricultural co-ops, which are independent farmers selling crops through a cooperative. And that can be made up in also different ways. Sometimes the individual farmers will own land collectively. Sometimes they'll own all their own businesses individually and just use the co-op to market their products. And then we have artisan co-ops, which are craftspeople or artists who create different kinds of art and sell it collectively under the cooperative business. So often expensive, like art, obviously art can be very expensive to create. For example, ceramics is a very expensive craft to get into. And so often people will, or those who are interested will, instead of having their own studio and trying to get through owning their own studio individually, they will work with a bunch of people who are also interested in ceramics or are already creating ceramics, and they will create a co-op where they can all invest into the different kinds of equipment that they would need. Instead of having to buy it individually, they'll own it together and operate a business together and sell their goods or sell their crafts under the same brand of the cooperative. And so again, the questions: who owns, who controls, and who benefits? For privately owned businesses, often the corporate supply chain, well, it's owned by large agribusinesses or wholesalers. It is controlled by corporate executives making decisions about supply and pricing. And then the benefits, the profits, go to the corporate owners, while producers often get lower prices. And then the producer cooperative, it's owned by the producers who contribute goods to the market. And then it's controlled by the members who vote on pricing, distribution, and reinvestment strategies, and just all business decisions. And then the benefits are the profits are shared among the producer members, who also get better market access and fair pricing. And so looking at the model to the right again, the members for this cooperative are the producers. And then what the producers put into the cooperative are their products, or produce or art. And then what they get out of it is the market and prices that are either better or equal to what the market is asking for. So again, we have the owner. The owner part is then putting into those products into the cooperative. And then the use that they're getting out of it are these above market or equal market prices for their goods. And that is our second section. So we'll take questions now.
All right, we've got a lot of questions. I've shared, and if anybody could just acknowledge by a raising of the hand, I've shared some notes from John, which at the end, when we're finished, and if we have time, this is a 75-minute presentation, and we've got a lot of questions. But those notes, it's a chart on the different types of business models, and it includes cooperatives. Now I'm going to move to a question, which I think has kind of been answered, but let's pimp it out, okay? So to form a cooperative, is it required to have a product or service to sell? And I know we've kind of answered this in a different way. I'm going to throw this first one to Naomi, and John, you're going to take the next question. But Naomi, what to form a cooperative of any type, and this harks back to some of the things John said, what would you have to say?
So the question is, do you have to have a product or service to sell?
To sell for a cooperative, yes.
I would say yes, but it can take time arriving at what you want that product or service to be. So I would say in the beginning stages, you can definitely discuss what that can be. As John said, for the example, for the agricultural cooperative, there are many different ways to create an agricultural cooperative. Each cooperative is kind of catered to the needs of the members. And so if the members need land, that might go into a land buying co-op or that kind of process, and you guys own all of a plot of land together. Or you guys might be individual farmers and you all already have your own land, and the product that you're selling is just the products, and you're using the cooperative to market all of your individual products together. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but there are many ways. And I would say to start out and just to start the process of a cooperative, you do need to know, but there's definitely a long process that can happen of you deciding what that can be. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to know exactly for you to, especially reach out to the Federation for us to help you maybe arrive at the specific thing you're interested in selling or servicing.
I have a question here because, and I just want some clarity here, because, I've been around the Federation about 3 years, and I often hear this question, and sometimes I'm really thinking about it like in the reverse, right? One individual steps up and says, I want to start a cooperative. But I was kind of thinking about it like it would be based at the community. Multiple people in the community might have the same need. And I just want to kind of uplift that. because it's it's not a one person thing. That's how I was thinking of it. And either one of you can kind of help me unfurl that thought process that I'm having, right? What I'm saying is, the question is it required to have a product or service to sell? And the answer was clearly yes. And then you just have to determine what that is. However, if it's a community generated thing, how does that come into being, and who's going to take that one?
Well, I think that you're correct in saying that the need has to be shared by a number of people in the community for a cooperative to really work and be effective. So it 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 really needs to be anchored in a group of people, not one person. And that's why I said, when this question came up of the land, that you really need to either get other people that have land, that have common products to put together, or you need to divide up the land in parcels so people have a specific spot to work with. But for instance, we have worked in South Texas in areas where they call these areas colonias. And basically you have people living in rural places along the border, and they didn't have running water. Now you could build a whole water system, which eventually came to be. But in the interim, the people formed a cooperative and bought 2 water trucks and operated those trucks to provide water to their communities. So that was more of a service than a product. People needed water to be more accessible than it was, potable water. And they wound up buying some water trucks that carried, 5, 10,000 gallons of water at a time. And they came to a community with 20 or 30 families, and they had the buckets and the barrels and filled them up with water. And the the cost of getting that water was shared by all the people who use the water. And so they formed a cooperative as a way to do it, because they wanted people involved to make democratic decisions about it. Now, you could have 10 people that have some degree of skills and knowledge in, say, fixing cars. And those 10 people could form a worker co-op, which, based on their skills, that they could open a car repair business that could change oil, that could fix spark plugs, that could do various other adjustments on a car. And those 10 people working together as a worker co-op offer that service to the wider community. There are some cooperatively owned worker co-op bakeries in California, where the people who work in the bakery are the owners of the bakery, and they produce bread and rolls and pastries and things that people in the community want to buy. and they market those things. And then what the resources that come into the worker co-op are then split up among the people. And I mean, you can go to some level of complexity here where, say, you give 1 point for each hour that a person works, and then you divide the surplus monies generated in the bakery among the people based on the number of hours they worked. Now, another way to do this is to recognize that, well, some of the we need 2 or 3 people who are master bakers. So we'll give them 1.5 an hour.
I
And
see.
when we split up the profit. So there, you know, I mean, when we have a group of people who want to form the co-op, then we go through an educational process with them to understand really what it's going to take to make this business work, the business plan, and what adjustments or how do we bend these principles of cooperatives to allow us to be successful in the business we're trying to create.
Thank you.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was very good. And the chat is blowing up. Again, this ends at, I think, at 8:15. Naomi, if you will move through the third part of the presentation, and then we'll spend the rest of the time taking questions.
Okay. So the third section is membership and governance in cooperatives. And this can also be a whole presentation in itself. But just to summarize, cooperative governance is distinct from traditional corporate structures because it is built on democratic participation, member accountability, and shared decision making. So while cooperatives follow common values and principles, the way democracy is practiced within them is shaped by the structure and membership composition of each cooperative. Governance can be complex, especially in cooperatives with different membership tiers or large numbers of stakeholders. Effective governance ensures that all voices are heard, but it also requires clear communication, engagement, and accountability. This also points to what Mr. Zippert was saying with the worker cooperative, how people might have different points, might be different kinds of members, depending on everyone's background and what they bring to the organization. And so it does take time, and it's a serious process to write out and think about how your cooperative will be structured to cater to the business that you all are trying to create.
So just send me a schedule.
So the closed loop governance model. So like I said, unlike traditional businesses where accountability moves upward to investors, cooperative governance operates in a closed loop where accountability moves between members, the board, and management. And so just to go through this model, at the very top, we have the members and owners. And the empowerment arrow kind of goes down to show how they empower the following sections. So the members and owners elect a board of directors, and the board of directors is made up of the members and owners. And then the board of directors hires management for the cooperative. And then that management goes and hires staff for the cooperative. And then how accountability flows the opposite direction. So the staff is held accountable and reports to the management. The management reports to the board of directors, and the board of directors reports to the members. So instead of it kind of going in one direction, flowing up, it is really, again, also a circle in the way that power and accountability is flowing throughout different layers of the cooperative. And you can be a member and an owner often in many cooperatives at each of these levels. So governance structures in cooperatives. The governance structure of a cooperative, like I said, varies depending on its size, industry, and membership. Cooperatives must ensure that governance reflects member priorities and participation. So just to use the examples from earlier again, in worker cooperatives, sometimes they elect a board of directors that represents membership and makes major decisions. Sometimes it'll be a worker cooperative of a few people at a coffee shop. There might be 12 members or 13 staff or 15 staff, and every single person on staff might also be a board member. Or they might have a mechanic cooperative that has a huge facility and has 100 or more members and members/workers, and there might be just a board of 20 or of 10 or 15, and that might represent some of the engineers, might represent some of the admin staff, might represent some of the mechanics. It all depends on the needs for your cooperative and how it plans to function and run its business. And then decision-making must balance democratic engagement with operational efficiency. So for producer cooperatives, often include multiple membership tiers based on roles in the cooperative. There might be a tier for farmers. There might be a tier for farm workers. There might be a tier for administrative staff. Might be a tier for transportation. It just depends on what stage the cooperative is in its business venture or what the cooperative plans on doing business for. So if it's just several individual producers, it might just be where everyone is on the board, or there's a small board and people take turns and have shorter term limits. Or it might be a larger cooperative, like maybe a dairy cooperative, where there's 60 or 70 producers and there's hundreds of farm workers and tens of staff. And it might be more complex and take a lot more thinking in how to make sure you set up a system that holds everyone accountable and makes sure that every member in the organization is engaged and their voices are heard. And so each tier might have different voting rights just based on their level of participation. So key takeaways for the presentation: cooperative businesses are member-owned, people-centered, and democratically controlled. Cooperatives distribute power among members instead of concentrating it at the top. The closed-loop governance structure ensures accountability to members, not to outside investors. And decision-making balances economic sustainability with social responsibility. And that was the last slide.
And I'm going to, Naomi, if you stop sharing, I'm going to make an attempt to share the chart that John created. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and throw out some questions for you all to answer. And I'd also like to say that the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund is a cooperative of cooperatives, which means that Naomi showed a slide that says, what was it? The management. No, you had the members and they hire the board. Then underneath the board hires management. Then management hires staff, right? That's exactly how we operate, right? We have a board who are members, they're farmers, cooperatives, and landowners. That board then turns around and hires an executive director. Our current executive director, he's been here for 28 years, but executive director, I think for 10 to 12 is Cornelius Blanding. So Cornelius turns around and hires me. I hire other people, and we're all working on the same vision of developing cooperatives, we have tiers, right? You can be a farmer, you can be a landowner, or you could be a cooperative member. And each of those tiers has traditionally a different voting power, right? So we are Naomi's presentation, I think. And now here comes my next question. And I'm going to throw this one to Naomi, and then I'm going to go try to get this chart up. If it doesn't come up, guys, it is in the chat if you can see it. If not, it will be emailed to you. The question, which comes from Jean Lamb. And Jean, I'm going to try to find you and take you off mute because I just want to. Here we go. Allow to talk. Jean asks, is there an ideal number of founding members? How many is too many? How many is too few? And I'm going to bounce this question between the both of you guys while I try and find that chart. Okay, Naomi, you start.
I can say, I think Mr. Zipper might take this one, but I would say that in the Federation, since we mainly work with producer cooperatives, the number that we say is 10, to start with 10, because people might fall off. I think the real number is 5 for what you need, but to start, it's always good to have 10. So if people fall off for a variety of reasons, it can take several years to start the cooperative. And so people might have other commitments, or just a variety of things can take them away from media focus on the cooperative as much as other people. So start with 10. If 1 or 2 fall off, you'll still have a core 7 or 8. So, but then I'll let Mr. Zipper probably has a stronger with a practical example. You can go ahead.
Well, I think your answer was pretty good. 5 to 10 people to get started, and then they need to identify other people that have a similar need, or people who could be convinced that the cooperative would be helpful to them. So I don't think there's a specific number. It's really people who share the common need for the cooperative and are willing to spend some time in a learning process, educational process, sitting down, talking to each other about how they want it to run and how they see it operating. So there's no minimum, there's no maximum. There's a minimum in different states to get a charter. In most states, it's 5 or less people. But the real point is that you need to have enough people to put together a business plan that will make sense and benefit those people. So that's why it's difficult. There's no, 15 is too many, 7 is too few. No, that really doesn't work in this. It's who has the need. If you get a lot of people at the beginning, you can have 2 or 3 study groups, or a study group that would study different aspects of the co-op. Or if say you're working in 5 counties or 5 parishes in Louisiana, you could have an organizing committee in each county or each parish that would help to identify the other people with a similar need. In some cases, with a worker co-op, you have a small business that's functioning now and has 20, 30 employees, and the owner is going to retire and go out of business. then the people there might want to sit down and figure out, could they own that business together as a cooperative? And then, you have a group then, a core group or the basic group. Some people will drop out, but others will come into it. So I hope I'm answering. There is no specific numbers like you were asking. It's to have a group of people who are representative of the area you're covering, who share the need, and who are willing to spend some time to learn and formulate how it would work, and then encourage other people to join.
So
I'll-
I wanna just kind of stress here because often in my role of membership, I'll see one person coming over, and that one person's like, "Oh, I'd really like to start a co-op." Would I be correct in thinking that, because I've definitely watched videos on this, it is not a one person thing. It must be a group. It must be a group.
Yes, yes. It can be a small group if it's a small group of people for a worker co-op, but it's got to be ultimately a much bigger group if it's a group that's marketing a product.
Okay.
And I would,
Go name it.
oh, sorry. Another example would be a consumer co-op or a food co-op, which is a cooperatively owned grocery store. And in that model, the consumers of the grocery store own the store. It's usually to serve them and because they need access to fresh and affordable food in their community. In that case, you can start with 5 to 10 people as the core group, but for that business model, you will need hundreds, depending on how large the community is and the market. You might need hundreds of members for the business to be feasible. You can start with 5 to 10, or there might not be an exact number to start. I think, like John said, 5 to 10 is a good number to start with, but it also just depends on, with those 5 to 10 people, how you want to run the business and what markets you plan to enter. That'll determine how many members you actually need for the organization to be feasible. And you guys can get those new members the further you go along in the process.
Now we have about 11 minutes and tons of questions. And so we might do a follow-up. We'll work that out amongst ourselves. But Jean Lamb, who the question about the number of folks. Jean, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Yeah, it did. Jean Lamb, I'm from Oklahoma. I'm specifically starting in Eastern Oklahoma Livestock Development Cooperative for Afro-Indigenous cow-calf producers, so for American Indian and Black producers. Beyond a marketing cooperative, the idea is that the longevity of it would develop into a buying power cooperative. When I ask about founding members, I farm and ranch myself, so the cattle part of it, I've got down pat. That is easy to do. The people management parts, people tend to be a little harder to manage than cattle. So how many is too many when you have too many ideas in the bylaw making process? And so I have currently a 10 to 12 producer advisory committee that I rely on to make decisions. But we've been talking about this for 3 years and we're still not off the ground. So it's a bit much, but thank you. That was very good insight.
I have a follow-up for you, Jean.
Yes.
As difficult, you said you've been talking about it for 3 years, so it's been definitely a process to get this going.
Correct. And there's compounding factors of the fact that the beef industry is incredibly strong right now. So asking someone to do more work with higher inputs and receive maybe less of a premium, that's difficult to sell. I'm selling a difficult message. I'm trying to get them with the buy-in would be that as the volatility of the commodity market softens in 4 to 5 years, they would be insulated from that hit, although they would feel it some, not as much. So the people element is not only the opinions and the commitment to sell through the cooperative, but it also has to do with the greater, larger strength of the environment right now, because cattle is one of those commodities that, of course, the price fluctuates significantly in month to month, year to year. Specifically right now with cattle numbers, it's very strong. So yes.
I think that, Jean, my question for you is,
Mhm.
with all of the work that you've currently put in and the fact that there's still much more work to do, why did you select to go with the cooperative business model rather than just be independent and trying to sell? Like, why did you choose this model?
Sure. This is so I farm and ranch, I raise cattle, but this is through my work with the Association of Conservation Districts and observations I've made being in the field doing large, medium, and small scale soil health conservation practices. Once they sort of figured out that I was a peer and raising cattle and they were not receiving top of market, and they came to me, I realized that some of the stewardship practices and animal husbandry, specifically relating to epigenetics and breeding of the beef animals, were about 10 to 15, sometimes even 20 years behind some of the developments that white, large scale, John said, consolidated producers are implementing. And I don't think that's lack of trying and engaging. It's just lack of, potentially not being invited into these spaces, places, meetings, community group sharing, lack of mentorship and engagement with the larger beef supply chain uh, and industry. So when I say livestock development, I really want to be able to take it from a marketing cooperative into a procurement and accelerate that gap and close it.
You want to
It's
bring more
not.
Black folks and more, you want to bring more people in to make money collectively in this democratic way. Am I getting it, or is that
Sure,
right?
yes, market access. I want to create greater market access and accelerate the some of the practices that other folks they're receiving premiums because they knew a guy who knew a guy. And I want to accelerate and remove those barriers.
Got it. Got it. Thank
Yeah,
you
and
so much.
I,
Oh, John.
I want to say, can I say something on this?
Yes,
Uh,
of course.
we have a cooperative similar to what you're talking about in East Texas, the Agri Unity Cooperative. And I've done some work with them on their bylaws and articles, and they were talking about the same thing, that they want to require as a condition of membership that the members agree to elevate their genetics and their bulls and their, so that the quality of meat they wind up with, it helps them to get a premium price. I think it would be worthwhile to talk to them. They have sold some cattle together. I think more as an experiment, not fully as a cooperative, but they learned a lot from that, and they're trying to structure the co-op, and it sounds like they're trying to do some things similar to what you're talking about, and you're not that far away from them. The other resource you have in Oklahoma is Willard Tillman. I don't know if you met him. He's
yes, Miss Virginia and Willard were at my wedding, so we're very close. Yeah, we
oh,
work very closely with them on some
right.
projects here in Oklahoma.
Well, Willard Tillman and I are on the Rural Coalition Board, and we've worked together for many years. I've come to some of his, annual meetings and things. I think he potentially would be a resource to you, and he's somebody who has attended Federation activities and meetings, and he knows now. There's an open question now, I think, as to what resources and support will be available from the Trump Department of Agriculture to Black, Indigenous, and other people of color farmers. We have to see how some of that plays out going forward. But anyway, there are some people near you, I think, that could help you a lot with this idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll certainly reach out to AgriUnity, and then I'll tell Willard we need to think a little bit more creatively, especially in the current political environment, about how to get this off the ground, because it's certainly a need. They want the purchasing power more than the selling power, but I really feel like if we can get a greater return on investment in a shorter amount of time and get them more operating capital, that the selling cooperative will come, or the buying, excuse me, the buying cooperative will come in, year 3, 4, 5. It's my opinion. So
Well,
needs.
everybody, it is 8:12. We have 17 questions in the chat. So I'm thinking that, people are learning a lot. We might even have a continuation where we just focus on questions as a follow-up to this. But this presentation ends in 3 minutes. And stay tuned for everyone who's on the call. If we have just a Q&A, which might be a briefer talk with Naomi, so we're going to play this by ear, but I really want to make sure that we get these questions answered, because as a federation, it is our job to help people develop cooperatives. But we are going to bring this to a close. Jean, I did message you. I hope you got it. If you email events@federation.coop, we will definitely make some connections to AgriUnity. I think I saw Willard not too long ago, and I know he's trying to get a cattle, a new co-op off the ground himself. And again, it is 8:13. We close in 2 minutes. I want to say that next month on Thursday, we will be, I think it's the second Thursday and the third Thursday, we will be exploring yet a new topic. And all of the questions in the chat, we're going to do our best to get answered and get over to you. So just bear with us. We want to thank everybody for their participation.